G'day groovers, rockers, and in between. This is Vinyl Vibes. I'm your host, Jack Hodgins. Today, for a second time, we are talking with rhythm guitarist of Hermits, Keith Hopwood. Last time I spoke with Keith, we talked about the big hits of the 60s the Hermits had, and we also discussed his 2021 solo album, Never Too Late. Since then, Keith has released two new EPs, Freedom Calls Chapter 1 and Freedom Calls Chapter 2, both released in 2023. In this interview, I'm going to discuss with Keith these two new EPs, but also I'm going to delve deeper into the music of the Hermits, talking about B-sides and album tracks that I didn't get to talk about last time with Keith. G'day Keith, and welcome back to Vinyl Vibes.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And it's great to have you here again. I mean, I wanted to start off with your newest releases. Your Freedom Calls EPs, Chapter 1 came out May 2023, Chapter 2 came out September 2023. I wanted to know, we talked about your album last time, Never Too Late, and I was kind of thinking, was it a different process working on these EPs, like the writing and the recording to, say, your album? Yeah.
It was a little bit different in that some of the stuff on the album had been tunes and half songs that I'd written sort of maybe a couple of years ago or 5 years ago, and I just went through everything. Probably about half of it was stuff like that was fairly old that I then just finished off and carried on. So once we got past that and I was doing the EPs, they're all brand new, so it was a matter of starting from scratch with everything. So that was really the only difference, I think.
It sounds like then, Keith, that you're a fast songwriter, I'd say, if you can get all that material out, from doing that first album to now the EPs. It sounds like you get the songs out pretty quickly.
Well, sometimes, you know what it's like. Sometimes it's quicker than others actually doing the writing, and then the producing of them has been affected sometimes by just waiting for people that I wanted to play on it to be around, because after COVID, all the musicians that couldn't work during COVID were suddenly all off on tour for it seemed forever. So that slowed the job down, just the production down a bit. And the writing of them, I don't know, sometimes it's quicker than others, you can get an idea and get half of it done and then struggle to finish it off. It's they're all different, really.
Did you work on it with your son again?
Not as much, because he's had quite a lot of stuff going on his own. So he looks after the whole thing in general. He does all the artwork for it, for all the EPs and everything. And he arranges all the mastering of it and, all the technical side of it and all the website is built and all that side of it. So it wasn't so much involved on this last EP, Freedom Calls 2, that we did. But, he's in and out. He's there.
I mean, you mentioned the logos there. I think you call it the Crooner logo. I love it that you've got that consistency across them. I mean, what was the idea to have that logo? What does that logo represent for you and your music? Yeah.
It was just when we went back to the beginning, the artwork for Never Too Late, I wanted something that was quite Art Deco, quite sort of Miami Art Deco-ish. And the logo was actually came up with from another guy who did that. And then we sort of he did a couple of different poses. And it's only since we then started to do these other covers that we thought, hey, this is a good little logo to feature. It gives an identity to the whole thing. So that's what we've done. And in fact, now we've got some bits of merchandise on the website. So we've used him on that. We've got some T-shirts. We've got a tote bag and things like that. But he looks really cool on them, And there's three of him. One's a martini swigging guy. One's the mic stand guy, and one's a pianist. So yeah, it's good. So the third one that I'm doing at the moment, that will have a similar cover but a different setting with the one guy. And then when we've done that one, and then at some point next year we're going to do all three EPs into one album and probably press some vinyl and stuff like that. So that'll be another cover with the little guys on them,
I was listening to the first EP. There's some great piano tracks on that, and I was kind of thinking, I know that you're a guitarist, and I was kind of thinking, did you write those on piano, or did you write them on guitar, convert them to piano? How'd you go about that? Yeah,
depends which one. A lot of them are on guitar, but no, there's quite a few written on piano. And then on some of them, I played the piano on it. And on the ones that I wanted, I'm not a brilliant piano player by any means. So, I have another guy who's really cool, and he comes in and does all the fiddly stuff for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, how long have you been playing piano, Keith? I had no idea you dabbled in piano.
No, I didn't. Actually, foolishly, when I was a kid, we had a piano at home because my mother used to play. And so I was offered, do you want to learn the piano? Well, I wouldn't go near it I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. I just wanted a guitar. So I refused point blank. So most of the way through when I was with the band, I couldn't play the piano. I couldn't even tune a guitar off a piano because I didn't know where the notes were. And it was only when I started my little studio in the sort of late 60s in Stockport, and we've got a piano in, and I thought, this is ridiculous. I've got to learn at least how to tune the guitar. So I sat down at the piano and learnt it backwards from the guitar. So that's C, so that must be C, and that must be, and I worked out all the chords, and then just started hacking away at it. So that it was very late in the day. So it's not I'm not a traditionally trained pianist by any means. But I can play it. I've got a nice feel with it. So it works for writing and the sort of simpler songs, then I'm fine with. It's only if you wanted some really sort of jazzy, bluesy stuff, which some of them have, that I need to get my mate in for them.
What I love about your music as well, Keith, is that you make it in at Pluto Music, Pluto Studio, I think you call it. Yeah, and I love that because you're making music with real instruments, real musicians, which, it sounds funny to say that, but we're living in a time now where people can make music on their laptops in their bedrooms. Why are studios so important, do you think, still to the music experience, like the making of it? Yeah.
Well, I think it's very important. As you're quite right, the technology now, you don't even have to be able to play anything. You could just download something which comes up with a bunch of chords for it. In fact, it writes the tune, which is, ridiculous. But no, I'm of that age. That's how we do it. We do things for real. These days, you listen to records and they can, a certain bunch of them, they can all sound the same because everybody's using the same samples. The more you can make it individual, then the better it is. So we like to do stuff that's for real.
As someone from like that kind of started in that British invasion era and is now here, AI is starting to get into music. Like, as someone from that era, like what do you think about that? Yeah,
it's a bit early to say. It obviously it's ripe for just cheating with it and doing that. I'm sure it's got fantastic uses in the future, but I think everybody's just got to be very careful that it's controlled, And in the music business, then I don't know. I think it's early. You don't like to knock down this new technology because so far it's all been good, and you can make great things out of it, and it helps. It's a bit of a tricky one, that. We'll have to see things up, I think. Yeah.
Moving on from chapter 1 to chapter 2 of Freedom Calls, I think probably my favourite song off that is Inspiration. I think that might be my favourite out of both of the EPs in terms of the songs you got on there. I was kind of thinking, like, how did that come to be, that song? Like, do you remember the writing of it? Yeah.
It's a story. I like writing, not for everyone, but a little story, a little vignette, and that was about a script writer that goes to Hollywood to try and make it there. And in fact, the original idea when I wrote it was the chorus should have been a girl. I can be your inspiration. So that was the idea of it. But I'd done like 3/4 of the production before I got the girl in, and then I realized I'd done it in the wrong key. So I couldn't be starting again with it. There was so many guitars on it. There's about 20 guitars on it. But I think it worked. It worked as a production. But it was him going to Hollywood and getting knocked back by all the studios, and then he meets this girl who's fantastic connections, and she can help. That was it. That was the idea behind it all. So I'm glad you liked it. It's great.
Across the project as a whole, Freedom Calls, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, in terms of the guitars that you were playing on that, are they vintage guitars, newer guitars? Like, what are you playing at the moment? Yeah. Some
are vintage. Some are new. One of them was a beautiful Gibson acoustic that's owned by a friend of mine, which I used on the last track, Place to Call Their Own, where it's just a bare acoustic, beautiful sound. that was a mate of mine. But the others, a couple of them are old ones. One's from the guitar I used to play in the band in the 60s. I've still got that. So that's one of a big acoustic, J200 Gibson. And the others are just various ones we've got knocking about. They're not particularly old, but they all sound different. That's the point. They are different. So you don't want to just track one guitar 6 times. You want 6 guitars, 6 different guitars. So, it's good. It was good fun doing that.
I wanted to also kind of touch on too. I mean, I know that you've been writing for decades now. Because I was having a look at some old Hermits albums, and "Don't Try to Hurt Me" was that the first song you wrote? I think that was on the first album.
It was. I mean, I don't remember writing. I mean, that was the first album, which was right after the first single. So, I mean, I was like 18 then. So it is an awful long time ago. I wrote that, finished it off, and we put it on the album. And then, I mean, I kept on writing then, but I used to write a lot with Lek because we used to room together on the road, So we tended to write all the time. So I mostly then didn't, although that was the first song that we did. This was the first song that anybody wrote in the band, that song. But I don't know why I didn't just carry on writing on my own. But I used to write with Lek then after that. But yeah, it was good to get that one on.
And that was the first song you ever wrote. And which is great because I think it's like a.
I know. Listen back to it now. I thought, well, that's not bad. I could have just carried on doing that. Why did I sort of stop? I mean, part of the difficulty was actually getting them recorded. We were in those days. The way you promote records is either the radio or you're on the road, and we were on the road like 99% of the year. So it was difficult politically getting these things in with Mickey Most because he'd be there organising songs that he got, So and when you're not there most of the time, you're only really showing up for the sessions. It's the easiest thing to do. So we got a few others on there, but probably not as many as we should have done. But there you go.
Would you say he was encouraging of you to write your own songs, or of the band, or not? Like, was that not really present? Or what would you say about that? Yeah,
the producer wasn't really encouraging of it. He sort of just came up with. Obviously, he had loads of songs around that people wanted him to get us to do. They were selling a lot of records at that point. No, it was tricky. It was difficult. It wasn't difficult writing them. It was difficult getting them recorded. So we persevered, and sometimes we wrote with our manager as well. He wrote some of them with us. And we thought, well, at least he's in London. Like he's. And we're in Paducah, Kentucky, he's got more chance of pushing it.
Would you say that your songwriting process, like with those early tracks that you wrote back in the 60s, was your songwriting process different then to what it is now?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, you just learn over the years. It was probably a bit too literal then and a bit simplistic, Now, I mean, when I left the band and went into writing for TV, I had to start writing like theme tunes and songs for films and all that, which I'd never done. I'd done a lot of it before at Pluto, but I had my business partner then, and he was so good at writing lyrics, that I just never bothered. I just left it all to him. But when we split and I was on my own, then I had to start writing lyrics, and I found I could do it, and I really enjoyed it. And it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You know what you want to say, but you've got to find out how to say it. But it's got to sing well. It's got to work a sentence in a song, not just a bunch of words. And I found that interesting. And that's I've gone on from that with getting back to writing songs. That's helped. So I think it's very different to when we were writing in the 60s. They were just a bit more simplistic and literal, and we wouldn't have gone through this thought process that I would now, saying, well, that doesn't work. How do we say that a different way? Interesting.
Because you started, when you joined the band, you started on lead guitar. Am I right on that?
Yes, I did. Because the guy that left when I joined, he was the lead guitar, and he left, so I just took over from him. And in the band I was in, my own band that I came from, I was the lead guitarist. I mean, I was never a brilliant lead guitarist, and that's why when Lek joined, who was much more of a lead guitarist than me, I stayed lead guitarist for a bit, but once he'd learnt all the stuff, we just swapped, and I just went back to playing rhythm. It was a much better result than me trying to do it.
I mean, in saying that too, though, I mean, I was listening to some of those early tracks, and especially "Don't Try to Hurt Me," as we were talking about. I mean, there's some great. I mean, I quite like the lead on that. Did you write the lead back then? Like
that would have been Lek playing the lead on it. Yeah.
And in saying that too, I mean, you mentioned those early sessions with the band. I mean, how did you guys go about that? Like, because I mean, did you guys just turn up and do a whole heap of songs in one session? Like, get them, like in those early days, just get them out and just get them recorded. Like, how'd you go about that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't too much you could do once you'd actually, you go in. Yeah, in the very first sessions we did, it was only one track. It wasn't even stereo. It was just one track. So all you can do is play you mic every instrument up, and you play it, and that's it. And then you sing it, and then you bounce that across, and maybe you double track it, or you put a tambourine on. And you can't really do much more, because the more bouncing you do, the quality of the tape goes down. So, when we did the first record, it was an ordinary 3-hour session, and we did the A side and the B side, and that's it. And really all the sessions in the first year or two were like that, because the technology wasn't there to do anymore. Once we got 4-track, okay, you could do a couple of tracks and then bounce down and all that. I mean, when the Beatles famously, with Sergeant Pepper, they only had 4-track, but they managed to sync 2 of them together and then do all this bouncing of stuff. It was just, what they did was just incredible. It was out of this world. But if you listen to what they created and then look at what they were doing it on, it's just very difficult. But no, so the early sessions were just very quick. I mean, as long as you knew it and you could play it and get it right, there was nothing else you could do. You couldn't, well, why don't we try this? Well, there's no point, very quick, very efficient.
In terms of the songs you guys were doing back then and just the songs and the charts generally, I mean, do you think the fact that you had just one track to work with made the songs better? I don't know,
with certain people you could point to and say, yes, it made the productions better. I mean, you had to decide at each point. Decisions had to be made as like, is that right? Does that sound right? Because once it's committed, you can't change it, and you can't take that tambourine out. It's in, people couldn't do that now, because they want the ability to be able to keep 500 tracks and think about it later. It just puts off the point where you've actually got to make a decision, and it's kind of gone too far that way now. Was when you had to sit down and say, even when you got sort of like 8-track, the records, when you listen to them, stuff like Motown and the Beach Boys and stuff from the mid 60s and the Beatles, of course, just amazing. Well, that's just with very clever guys, but thinking it, and clever engineers as well, because half of it was the engineers in like, how do we do that and keep that and do that, and at the end of the day make it still sound brilliant and not rough. I think it's improved the way the records were produced. I mean, it's nice to have the facility to sort of like, oh well, we'll keep that track and see if we need it, but in some cases now it just gets to the point where everybody just records everything and all maybe we'll keep that, and then somebody's at the end of the day has got to sit down and go through it and pick the actual tracks that you want. So I think there's a case sometimes, and sometimes I do it, right, I'm not going to keep that. That's a good tape, but that's it, and more often than not, you don't regret it. It's not like a week later you come back and think, oh, I wish I kept the other one. It's and it's always something you could do again if you really needed it. But it just creates a mountain of work and procrastination. Like, well, we'll sort that out next week. Like, why do today when you can put off till tomorrow?
What was your process when writing with Lek? Like, did you guys have a way you went about songs? Like, did you come to him with ideas? Like, did you just work together? Like, yeah, how'd you go about it?
Well, it was usually in some hotel room, after the shows there, because we'd be on the road, as I say, like most of the time, and most of the time in America. So, no, we just sit down with a couple of guitars. I think we probably tended to get the music going first and then stick the words on, or occasionally maybe you came up with a title, and so you start off with that. But more than that, to be honest, I can't remember.
Because you guys used echo chambers back then, didn't you? Is that how you got the echo reverb kind of thing? Yeah.
Well, if it was a proper studio with money, with a budget,
Yeah.
like it was built like where we recorded, they used plates, EMT plates. But basically, it was a box made out of chipboard that was 8 foot long, 4 foot high, and about a foot wide. And inside the box was a sort of 8 foot sheet of like aluminium hanging on it. You'd feed the signal in, and then you get an output from it, and that was the reverb. This is very posh reverb. They were very expensive, these things. You could adjust the length of the reverb by how much the metal was vibrating. So if you wanted a shorter reverb, the things that were holding it, you just sort of damp it so it didn't vibrate as much. And that's what everybody had. We had two of those in our big studio, and they came out to where I am now. And we used them for a while. This is back in the 80s when we first built this place. But then gradually, all the digital stuff was taken over. And we also had a Lexicon 224, which was the other sort of 80s massive reverb, very popular. We had one of those. But all these units just start taking over, and these things were so big and heavy. I mean, you needed like 4 guys to lift it, so you couldn't really move it very easily. But that's where everybody's reverb came from, unless it was either that or it was what they call a spring reverb, which is a different type. So it was one or the other. But before digital stuff, the stuff that you know now, that's what it was. It was physical. And sometimes very posh studios had a room, right? And this room was tiled in such a way, and you just fed the signal into the room and fed it out, and that's your reverb, because it just reverbs in the room. Yeah. So that wasn't too common, but the EMT plates, they were German, were everywhere. That's what everybody had.
When you guys played on Ed Sullivan back in, like, I think it was 65, you guys played on there, like the population of people you're playing to was like the equivalent of doing like a national tour in one show almost. Yeah. How did you not like die of nerves, Keith? I mean,
yeah, I think, by the time we did that, we had a certain amount of success and a certain amount of big shows. So I suppose you just get used to that side of it. And with someone like Ed Sullivan, I don't think you're thinking of the audience so much, although we should have been. I mean, it was live, that as well, so it wasn't even. Most of them were just mimed, but that was all live. We're plugged in and had to play everything, So it was a real sort of nerve-wracking one. I don't remember being nervous, but I suppose we were to a degree. Yeah.
Did you have any idea how many people were watching? Like, did you know at the time, or did you like? Yeah.
No, I don't think we knew at the time. We knew it was a very big show. I couldn't understand it because, he was such a weird guy. He was just like this strange uncle that nobody liked. It was just, and he wasn't particularly friendly. He was just, it was like from another era, even like from the sort of 1940s or something. It was just very strange, but a massive show. It was like, so he was the sort of Bruce Forsyth of America, like in England on a Sunday night. You get Sunday night at the London Palladium, and it was the same kind of variety show. So you get a band and a conjurer and a this and a that and the other, and then a game at the end, some big quiz thing, And Bruce Forsyth over here was the sort of, he could do anything. He could dance, he could sing, he was a brilliant pianist, everything. But he was like the host, it was a similar thing over there, except that Ed Sullivan didn't do anything except announce the people. It was a bit of a weird one, yeah, but it was incredible exposure because it was just instantly, as you say, it was like 40 million people. So amazing.
I think you guys did your first tour, if I'm right on this, May, like of the US. I mean, May '65. Can't You Hear My Heartbeat came out in January '65. I think that was number 2 in the US, and I was kind of thinking, had that gone to number 1? I mean, I think it was kept off number 1 by "Stop in the Name of Love" by the Supremes or something like that. I think that's the one it was. Yeah. Would you guys have gone earlier to the US? Like, I mean, May was only 4 months after, but I mean, would you have like really got the stuff together? Yeah.
I probably not, because you probably couldn't have set it up and changed it that quickly. The tour we were on then was this Dick Clark Caravan of Stars thing, which Dick Clark was a very famous TV show. He'd been around for forever, pop type shows, and every summer he'd have all these tours that were going out, loads of them. by a dozen different tours all over the US. And there was about 13 acts on this tour, and we were topping the bill, So that was tough going, because you were just on a bus, literally a bus. And we would just, and every other night you didn't get to sleep in a motel. Every other night you slept on the bus, because the distance was so far that the bus had to just drive all night. So, and as I say, it was a bus. There were no beds. It was just luggage racks, and 13 acts. It was a bit strange, to say the least. And of course, by that time, we were very, very hot potatoes. So it was, anyway. In the end, we managed to get ourselves off the bus and just got a car with a driver. There was a bit of an altercation one morning between two of these very big singers that were on there, and one thought the other had been messing with his woman, so he pulled out this 45 and started brandishing it. So we thought that was a good enough reason to get off the bus. So we got a car and a driver, and at least we were off the bus, So it was an interesting tour. That first one, that was that was obviously arranged just after the first record had come out, so which was a big hit, but of course by the time we got there we were much bigger than that, so we probably wouldn't have done it if it had been at that time, but it was already arranged, so there we were.
Had the Beatles, for whatever reason, had they never existed, do you think you guys would have been the forerunners of the British invasion?
Difficult, because it was the Beatles that there's nobody like the Beatles, so without the Beatles it's very difficult to say what would have happened. They just blew everybody away over there like they did here, and it was partly the look. They didn't look like anyone else, but it was obviously mostly the music, and the fact that they were writing it all, which nobody did, and the fact that they were a band and not a solo artist, which most of the American ones were. So I don't know if they'd never existed. I don't know what would have happened. I think it would have been very difficult for anybody else to make anything like that sort of thing. And of course, it was only after they'd opened it all up to this sort of English thing and sound and look and everything that the rest of us, piled in then. But I think without the Beatles, it's difficult to surmise what would have happened, really, because they had all these. Like Dion and Fabian and all these. You got the Beach Boys were obviously a band, but there were a lot of solo singers, and sort of overnight they could then not get arrested. They were just completely out of favor. You get people like Nick Sedaka, who had loads of hits. He ended up living in England. Just couldn't get work, couldn't get a record deal, and he was a fantastic writer. And in fact, he ended up in the studio below mine in Stockport with the guys at Strawberry, and he made an album there, which is what got him back on his feet, with Solitaire and that. And that was made with the guys from 10cc. So they produced it and played it. So he then, having had that as a hit, he then got back into America, but it was a convoluted process. And over here, we loved them all. So they had a career, whereas in America, it was like, no chance. We'd just taken over, the English guys had just wiped the board clean. So it was very weird.
I have to ask you this. What did you think of the recent Beatles song, Now and Then?
Do you know, I actually listened to it yesterday because I'd heard bits of it on the radio. So I pulled it up in the studio to have a proper listen to it. Yeah. Well, I'm not overly impressed. I like some of the chord changes in it, but I wasn't that impressed with the overall sound. I don't know whether they were trying to make it sound sort of like 1968 or whatever, but no, I think I preferred the other one they put out a few years ago. The other one was Free as a Bird. Well, that I quite liked, but this one, I think they probably should have left it where it was.
I was kind of reading too. I read Harvey Lisberg's book, you guys' manager, because he told this story in his book where you guys played Las Vegas, I think, on your US tour. I'm not sure which one, whether it was the first US tour you guys did or which one, but that hotel room, they said you didn't have to pay for your food or your drinks, and they gave you, in each band member, they gave you guys $100,000 credit for their casino. Am I right on that?
Yeah, you're right in that it's in the book. Yeah, I'd like to say they did and we enjoyed it, but I don't remember anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know where he's got that from. I mean, there was a few other things that he remembered that, no, that's not quite right, Harvey, but it's what you remember, isn't it? It's a long time ago. I don't know where that came from. It's given us 100 grand each. It's just crazy. And we weren't even playing there. It's not as if we were doing a show there. We were just staying there on a trip. So yeah, would have been nice, but no, I don't think so.
Another story that, again, it's out of Harvey's book. He got a call from the Elvis's manager, the Colonel, and Elvis said he wanted to meet you guys. And in Harvey's book, he says you went back to England. I don't think you ended up meeting Elvis. Am I right on that? Yeah.
What happened? The way it came about was done a very long tour in the States, and the last date was Hawaii. So we're in Hawaii, but we finished the tour, and Elvis is in Hawaii filming Blue Hawaii. I don't know who spoke to who, but look, we're both here. Can we meet him? It was pretty obvious, that would be fantastic. So they said, yeah, sure. So we set it up for like 2 days hence. Obviously, we're now staying there just to meet Elvis, because otherwise we'd have been going home. Yeah, it set it up and it didn't happen. And then we set it up again and it didn't happen. And then and by this time, 3 of us thought, you know what? We're going home. So we did. And then, of course, Peter and Barry and Harvey, they hung on there. They got to meet him. So that's what that was. We just got fed up with waiting, really. We got on a plane and went home.
In saying that, what do you think you would have said to him had you have met him? Like, is there anything you would have...
Oh, well, I would have liked to talk to him about all the early records that he made with Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana, who I met those guys over here. I was helping a friend of mine, probably, when was it? About 10 or 15 years ago. Anyway, he was making a documentary about Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana and all the early days stuff. So he was going around and filming sort of Ronnie Wood and George Harrison and all that, and I was helping him trying to get a film deal for it. And the guys then did a show at Ronnie Scott's in Birmingham, and all these other guitarists, that would come up and do a little set with them, so it was really cool. So yeah, I would probably talk to him about those early days and how it got going, because the sound of those records, the point was the sound that they made, and there was only 3 of them. So double bass, Scotty on guitar and the drums. And the drums were very, very simple. But the sound was fantastic. And when my mate was going around doing all this filming, that's what all these guys like George and Ronnie Wood, they all said, that's what got them into playing the guitar, was listening to these records. It was those early Elvis records that did it. So I wanted to talk to him about that a bit, because that's an era that even then, was long gone, because this was like whenever it was, 66, 67. So yeah, interesting. But not to be.
Young people are flocking to the culture of the 60s and 70s, the fashion, just the history. I mean, why do you think young people are connecting so much with a time period that they never were a part of, like they were never existed in? Yeah,
I think these things go naturally in circles, and at some point, people. I remember one of my sons when he was about 14, and this would have been about 30 years ago, probably. And he discovered the Kinks, and all of a sudden he couldn't get enough of the Kinks. It was just like, because otherwise he was into Prince and all that sort of. We were miles apart, But he did, and I think sometimes they look back and it's different. And I mean these were all, if people do that, they're looking back at acts that were successful, and if they were successful once with young kids, there's no reason why they can't be successful again, or they could be, attractive to, a modern 14-year-old would like it. I mean, not every 14-year-old is going to like it, obviously, but there'll be a certain of them if they're interested in that and they want to look back. So I don't know why, but, everything in music goes in circles, like half the music now sounds as if it was produced in the 80s, It's, we did something for somebody, and he said, well, he complained because it sounds like the 80s. And we said, yeah, but that's what the music is now. This is current. Like, because we've gone, the wheels turned around again.
I didn't realise that you guys played Australia, I think, back in January 1966 to February 66. I mean, do you remember much about that Australian tour? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that was with Tom Jones. But one of the places we played was this big fairground in Melbourne that was quite a famous fairground there. But anyway, yes, I remember being over there. It took forever to get there. We had to stop about 6 times, fill the plane up with petrol and all that sort of stuff. And then when we got there, we got in the hotel, came out, and we thought we'd go for a drink somewhere. And they said, no, all the pubs shut at 6 o'clock. And they did. So the only place you could get a drink was in the hotel, which we thought was outrageous.
Yeah.
So all the pubs were shut at 6 o'clock, which seemed a very strange idea. Anyway, the next time we went back, which was probably about 3 years later, they'd extended it a bit. So I think they opened till about 10 o'clock then. So it was a bit more like Scotland,
Yeah.
So obviously trying to keep everybody sober. But yeah, I remember a few of the gigs. No, I don't remember anything too well about it, but and there was a film a show that they filmed, which was a sponsored show, which is still knocking about somewhere. I can't remember what the sponsor was, but it was all filmed in a theatre live, by the sponsor. It was probably a TV thing at the time. So yeah, interesting. It was an interesting tour. So I don't know where we went. We probably just went to the places you'd expect, Sydney, Adelaide, Perth, and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was that was an awful long way in 1966. It was like going to the moon.
Well, Keith, I want to thank you for your time today. I think it's been great, and thanks so much again.
No, at all. Glad to talk, Jack. Glad to talk.
That was my second interview with rhythm guitarist of Herman's Hermits, Keith Hopwood. To check out Keith's 2023 EPs, Freedom Calls Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, you can head to Keith's website at keithhopwood.com. Remember to share this show with other music fans. And if you really enjoyed this edition, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Vinyl Vibes. And to all you music lovers out there, stay groovy.